Kirishima's father grows prouder and more full of himself the nearer to the execution date they get. Kirishima grows nervous and runs his plans forwards and backwards through his brain. He wonders absently if he should tell his mother, if he should tell Aiko. He's already left unexpectedly once, after all. He does decide, after much thought and running his finger through his now too short hair, to tell his sister. "I already knew," she says. Kirishima looks at her, braiding her hair at her vanity. She turns her head to meet his gaze, smiling soft. She's smart, smarter than he was at 15 at the very least. He stares at her, a little stupefied. "Every time Father mentioned it, you didn't look the least bit pleased," she says. "And I read your letters." "You did?" he asks. She nods. "I begged Father to show me them when he arrived. I never knew they were for me. He altered all of them before I saw, but I know your writing. I kept quiet, of course." Kirishima frowns. It was an awful lot of work he put into ensuring no one found out. He furrows his brow. His father could do to trust Aiko more. "You love him." Kirishima feels a shock of embarrassment through his chest. He didn't remember talking much about Bakugo, but... "You're so obvious." She laughs. I missed you, E. But you're different now. You're stronger. And if I were you, I'd do everything I could to save the one I love." "Aiko," Kirishima says, softly. He doesn't know what to say. "I missed you too. And Mother." She nods. "I'll take care of Mother." "Don't tell her what really happened between Father and I," Kirishima says. "It would break her heart." Aiko clicks her tongue. Very brash of her, given her usual meticulous propriety. "I hate him." Kirishima nods. He thinks he does now, too. "Let me help," she says, turning finally in her seat to face him. "What can I do?" "It's dangerous." Kirishima shakes his head. "If Mother lost both of us to the court, just imagine it. She'd be left with only him." Aiko shakes her head. "No, I'm helping." "You're so stubborn," Kirishima says fondly. "I wish you could meet him." "I can only meet him if you save him," she says strictly. "So use every bit of help you can get, Ichiro. I'm offering." Kirishima takes a deep breath and nods slowly. Okay. "What should I do?" "Stand with Father," Kirishima says. "When the signal is given, distract him. As much chaos as possible is the only way I'll manage to free them. I think that's enough. The rest is very much a one-person plan up until they're free." "If that's the most I can do, I'll do it." She nods. Kirishima holds back a sigh of relief. "Thank you, Aiko," he says. He goes back to his room for the night until the wee hours of the morning. He rises before the sun so he can clearly see the crepitus for its hasty departure. He'd been back and forth already, loosening knots and smuggling in supplies. For a prize ship, it wasn't very well guarded. Kirishima thinks it's because there's a dispute over who should claim it. His father, his uncle personally, or have it be handed to the court. Such, it was left in the harbor in view of each party until they could come to a consensus. It worked well in his favor. He couldn't forget one detail. He had to work with haste and secrecy, lest his whole world come, for what, the second, third time in his life, to an end. This time, though, if he failed, the morning light would not come despite his sorrows. Kirishima does not sleep the night before the execution. In the morning, when the maids enter his room to ready him for the day, he's already sitting up in bed, nerves on edge. At breakfast, it's just his mother and Aiko and the various servants who move silently in and out of the hall. Aiko is visibly giddy, and Kirishima tries to send her hardening glances to make her pipe down. Kirishima takes care when speaking with his mother. He'll miss her all over again. I wish you wouldn't watch those horrible executions, she croons over Aiko. Ichiro, since you've been gone, your father has been insisting she become accustomed to them in your place. Darling, you really needn't attend this one. Father requested me. She lies. Their mother sighs. We should be off now, Kirishima says, standing. Before his mother can rise, he leans down to hug her close and kiss her cheek. I love you, Mother. She smiles up at him, eyes bright. And I love you, Ichiro. I'm proud of you, no matter what you decide to do in life. Kirishima thinks for a moment that she's aware of his plan, but he realizes, too, that she's always been that way. He tears up as he leaves her and refuses to turn around. The atmosphere around the execution is like it's always been, but with his eyes open to the truth of the brutality of the world, Kirishima's stomach turns. He had to time this perfectly. There's already a line of prisoners waiting for the gallows, heads hanging low along with their wrists, heavy shackles pulling them down. He scans the crowd, restless and excited, young and old alike sitting in the stands to watch filthy lives come to a justified end. He sees Mina, and his heart turns over in his chest. There's no yellow bandana in her hair. He sees Sero, gaunter than ever, and Sato and Shoji and the rest of the crew. His muscles are tensed right up until he finally spots Bakugo. They're all spread out, but that'd probably be easier for him. He looks to the clock tower. Only 15 minutes before execution. He had to move. It had to be now, or he wouldn't have enough time. Father, excuse me for a moment, Kirishima says. I don't think my breakfast is settled very well. Don't miss the execution, he says, clapping Kirishima on the back. It's a show for you, after all. Yes, Father, Kirishima says. He squeezes Aiko's hand tightly before he leaves, and though he feels tears threatening and stinging behind his eyes, her face is composed and ready. It gives him strength. He forces himself to walk until he's out of view, and then he runs. He runs and he tries to remember the layout of the execution arena, tries to recall how to reach the grounds the quickest way and where all the crew were standing. He gets to the prisons first. There was a prisoner who was forgotten for execution, Kirishima says to the guard, breathing heavy, trying his best to look visibly annoyed. His stress makes for a good cover. Newer guards were stationed during special days so the veterans could enjoy the hangings. So many things were working in his favor that Kirishima thought that maybe it was a setup to something horrid. Which one? The guard asks, quickly eyeing the medals on Kirishima's uniform. I'll retrieve them. In the 8 block, Kirishima says, making up the sector. Just give me the keys to the shackles and I'll take him myself. You're new, right? We haven't any time to waste. Yes, sir. He nods, fumbling for the keys at his belt. Kirishima nearly sweats out of his skin as he waits for the iron keys to be placed into his gloved palm. Not only did this set open the cells, but the shackles the prisoners were bound in. Thank you, Kirishima says. He runs into the prison, then promptly runs around to the eastern exit. He glances behind him to see the guard on duty standing at attention once again, none the wiser. He runs to the government house. He moves as fast as he can in his full nobility garb. It's heavy and layered, fit for show and not for fighting. He keeps his pace as quick as he can as he enters, not looking at the guards as he passes by. Once inside, it's easy. Even most maids and butlers had the afternoon to go see the hangings. That was good for his plan, too. Not necessarily for being caught, but more so because he didn't want any innocents hurt in the wake of his desperate idea. He climbs the grand staircase to his father's office. He enters and closes the heavy doors behind him, putting his sword through the handles. Even if the sound were to reach the ears of anyone below, a locked door was safest. He goes straight behind his father's desk, where the wall is covered with alcohols, spirits, whiskeys, rums, anything and everything. He throws the bottles. He smashes them on the fine wood of his father's desk, scratching and soaking the surface. He empties them one after another, coating the room. His thick white gloves protect him against the glass, but the alcohol stains the fingertips. That's okay, Kirishima thinks. I'm not as pure as anything like that anymore. May as well let it all show. His father's impressive office now reeks worse than any bar or pub Kirishima has ever been to. He spreads the alcohol out as much as he can, and when he reaches the table covered in pages of journals and cloths, he pauses. His father was in charge of looking at the clues of Might's treasure and piecing them together. Kirishima had told him he didn't once have the chance to look at the maps or notes. Bakugo had them memorized. Mina did too. And Kirishima remembered bits and pieces. But he doesn't have time to read anything over. He does, however, tuck one journal into his inner breast pocket, vaguely familiar as the matching one Bakugo failed to receive the day they met. He empties the bottle he's holding onto the table and walks to the door. He slides his sword out of the handles and steps out quietly into the lavish hall. He can't hear a sound. He takes off his gloves and throws them into the mess and lights a match. He strikes a spark into the room, jumping back at the quickness of which the flames rip into being and start to feast on his father's trophies. He runs out before the flames consume it all. Kirishima reaches to his hip where he had fastened the handheld explosive cannon Bakugo so carefully created, much more effective than anything he's ever seen. He throws it high into the air, wincing as the explosive sounds reach his ears when it reaches whatever wall or floor was its target. The noise is already bringing commotion, and Kirishima can see smoke already curling through the open windows of his father's office as he gets outside. He thinks he took too long preparing the fire. He prays to everything he knows that he's not too late. He runs again, high on adrenaline. His heart beats fast and sweat rolls down his neck, but he pays it no mind as he runs for Bakugo's life. It's hard to get into the arena again, packed, nearly overflowing with bodies, ready to see the notorious pirate's death. Kirishima can hear the spokesperson droning on with formalities, and the knot in his stomach loosens a little. He's not too late. And now for the charges of... The crowd is uproarious. Kirishima's blood runs cold under the afternoon heat when he sees him. He was going first, not last as a grand finale. He's shackled, head held high, but Kirishima can see the gray haggardness of his skin. The hangman places a rope around his neck. Kirishima wants to cry out that he's here. He's going to save him. He loves him. He's here. He's here. Bakugo Katsuki. Captain, Kirishima thinks. To be hanged under the charges of the destruction of approximately 7 government fleets, Iowa and otherwise, the sinking of 13 lone government vessels, including the murders of Captain Soe, Captain... Kirishima thinks he sees Bakugo grin as the spokesperson continues. The amount of damage and thievery absolutely ludicrous. Kirishima glances at the sky. He can see flecks of black float their way into the arena. Fire! Someone shouts from below. Kirishima slips into action again immediately. The government house aflame! The crowd murmurs loud and the spokesperson stops speaking and holds out a hand to the hangman. Kirishima pushes and shoves his way through the crowd as the panic rises with the flames only a block away. He reaches the ground floor as the crowd starts bustling frantically. He skips the line and gets to Sero. The crowd is turning over itself, swelling and curling in like a storm at sea, shouts filling the air for assistance and calm, but the panic rises still. He sees Aiko, clutching her father's arm, fanning her face in mock distress, keeping his attention from the commotion on the arena floor as prisoners and common folk mix together in budding chaos. What? Shh, Kirishima says quickly as he reaches Sero. I'm getting you all. The Crepitus is at the dock. She's mostly ready. Go. Sero nods at him and runs into the crowd, and Kirishima shoves off the prisoners in line, wanting to be set free as well. Just run. Kirishima hisses at them, and a few do scurry away, wrists still locked together. He wishes them the best. "Ojiro," Kirishima says, catching him. He unlocks his bonds. "Go to the dock. The Crepitus is there. Wait for the captain." Kirishima unlocks crew after crew member, telling them to go, but he can see the hangman standing still upon the platform, locking Bakugo into place just by the set of his hand upon the lever. "Kiri?" Mina says, incredulous. She's standing just beneath the platform, likely looking to help Bakugo. "Let me get you free," Kirishima says quickly, grabbing her arms. He unlocks her shackles and they fall to the ground. She doesn't wait to rub her wrist before punching him hard and upright in the jaw. The impact makes his head spin. He's glad his tongue wasn't between his teeth. The strength is weaker than he knows she's capable of. He grits his teeth against the sting, though. "I'll explain later, okay?" He drools a little and wipes his mouth on his sleeve. "I'm getting the captain." Mina bites. "Mina, no," Kirishima says, glancing up. "The hangman's hand is on the lever, and I don't know how much time we have until reinforcements come." "Then stand beneath the platform," Kirishima says quickly. "It's not a long drop, so catch him, okay?" "Catch him?" Mina shakes her head. Her curls have no bounce to them, no shine like usual. Kirishima wants to focus on his plan, but he's having trouble ignoring the dampened spirits of his friends. "What? He's not going through that platform, hun." Kirishima cranes his neck to look up at the hangman, taking in the chaos. If there's one prisoner the government wants, it's Bakugo Katsuki, so he's not going anywhere. "Trust me." Mina stares at him hard. "Mina," Kirishima says, grabbing her forearm. He breathes heavy and looks back with every ounce of remorse and love he has to give. "Trust me." She stares back, lips pressed together tight. She nods and Kirishima sighs quick in release and turns. The stairs to the platform are steep, so the hangman doesn't see him approach. He calls out to avoid startling him. "Hangman, it's Kirishima Ijiro." Kirishima hopes Mina is in place just in case, but he doesn't hear the boards drop. He fixes a scowl, channeling all of his hate towards his government into his acting, and looks to Bakugo. He turns up his lip at Bakugo's back, bare and scarred, new welts blistering over his flesh. Bakugo doesn't turn at his presence. "Hangman," Kirishima addresses the hooded man. "This one's mine. I can't wait another day to see this pirate still alive." He hopes his voice sounds seething enough. "If you'll allow me to do the honor," Kirishima says, reaching his hands towards the lever. The crowd has erupted into brawls below the platform, the crowd and prisoners mixing, fighting. It's a brutal performance. The hangman steps aside. Kirishima is surprised, though he supposes his uniform grants him authority. He watches as Bakugo side-eyes him, expressionless. Kirishima handles the hilt of his sword. He would have to time this perfectly, though Mina should be a safety net. He can't hesitate. He pushes down hard on the lever, the boards creaking away beneath Bakugo's feet as he unsheaths his sword and swings it fast through the air at the rope. The cutting edge finds no resistance. Kirishima whirls to the hangman, already taking it in. The platform is too high to jump from unscathed, especially with all the people running about below. The hooded man is already reaching for his sword. "Always heard the Kirishima-san was a traitor." The hangman speaks. "Should be hanged with a lot of them, I think." "Let me pass," Kirishima says, still trying his authority. But the man spreads his feet apart and stances himself for a fight, and wastes no time in lunging at Kirishima. He's a lot bigger, but it makes him slower too, and Kirishima dodges him easily. Out of the corner of his eye, he sees Mina and Bakugo. He ducks underneath his lunge, trying to kick him away. He's stocky, but Kirishima is strong, and the impact of his feet against the back of his knees makes the hangman lose his balance. The platform creaks and sways as he falls, and Kirishima grabs his sword before it skitters off the edge. He practically throws himself off of the platform in his escape. taking the ladder rungs two at a time until he can jump to the ground. The hangman is lying on the ground, trying to stand, but hindered by the crowds and the force of his fall. Mina and Bakugo are probably far gone by now. Kirishima hopes they are. His chest tightens. He hopes he'll make it to the crepitus. He hopes the crew will have him back. Hopes Bakugo will have him back. Leaving the arena isn't easy. It's still in a panic, though how many minutes had passed, perhaps it was only seconds. And he has to keep an eye out to dodge the debris being thrown in the riot. There are officials trying to separate the pirates from the common folk, unable to fire or draw their sword in the crammed chaos. Not enough of them there to easily regain control. Most of them are probably running to aid in the fire. Kirishima can still see the smoke billowing high into the sky as he finally breaks free into the streets. Fighting and shouting still rings out. He gathers his bearings and starts to run, shouts growing behind him. He can tell from the shift in the atmosphere he's been found out. He sheds his heavy coat and tosses it aside. There's no hope behind him, so he runs forward, turning the corners quick. He knows these gridlock streets well, but so do the men chasing him. He passes one alley and almost trips over himself trying to stop. "Mina," he cries out before she turns the corner. "No, the other way." She turns, Bakugo with her, Kirishima sees now. "Look for the cathedral." Kirishima points ahead of them. The towers could be seen above the rows of houses and shops. "Go that way and you'll make it to the His last word is knocked from his lungs as he topples to the ground, soldier on top of him, struggling to pin his arms. His head hits the ground and his face scrapes against the cobbles. His vision flashes for a moment, and when he blinks, Kirishima can see Mina and Bakugo pausing. "Go," he screams, frantic. If they don't, it'll all have been for naught. "Fucking traitor." The soldier grunts and raises a fist to hit him, but Kirishima dodges and tries to push him off. But even though his fist hits the concrete, he still manages to pin him to the ground. His knees find his chest and the weight is crushing, and Kirishima feels tears creep out of the corners of his eyes to drip down into his ears. The sensation is oddly distinct amid the struggle. He can feel all of his hope being ripped away, the threads of it he allowed to embed into his heart coming unstitched as every second he loses the fight. Kirishima can't help but remember the night spent at home, unhappy with his father's domineering nature, the nights spent afraid in Bakugo's bed as he couldn't tell if he was scared or homesick or overwhelmed. He remembers leaving him and coming back, and watching his life be ripped away. He couldn't let it happen again. He stopped struggling.